Hello, hello, hello. Ooh, it is sunny out there. Let me get this straightened out here. Hello, welcome everyone to this week's Ask Shelly Show. My name is Shelly Fan. I am your emotional intelligence expert. I am the CEO and owner of Ask Shelly Consulting, where we bring corporations to peak performance through the provision of psychoeducation. I am a licensed psychotherapist here in the state of Florida. I absolutely love what I do. Every Tuesday at 12, I go before you live to share a question that has been asked of me. And so it brings me great, not necessarily pleasure. I mean, it is pleasure. It's all purpose, right? But I am truly blessed by the opportunity to share these questions with this community. Our listeners are blessed by your feedback, so I'm asking you to engage. As you log in, please share. We are talking about child suicide today, suicide amongst our children. So this is a really important topic. I would appreciate your shares. You never know whose ear gates or whose line of sight that this will land in. So please, take this opportunity to like and share, grab your pen and paper. Again, we're going to be talking about childhood suicide. Let me get my Instagram family here. Oh man, these cameras are all, I need an assistant. Hi, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining this week's Ask Shelly Show. I love you. And again, I'm Shelly Fan, your emotional intelligence expert. Now, every week I go live, as I said before, sharing a question that was asked of me. Most of the time are the people who write in find it to be a privilege and a blessing, your feedback, not only my professional feedback, but also your feedback, your perspectives. And so you are encouraged to engage, write in the comments, share your feedback, share your perspectives. It is valuable. Now, as a licensed psychotherapist, I have the privilege of bringing individuals and couples and families to their next level, right? By providing evidence-based therapeutic interventions to help them to break through maladaptive thought patterns, behavioral patterns. We're able to address emotional injury and so much more. This is not an attempt to replace that process. For those of you who feel like you need additional support, you can email info@askshelly.com. You can also visit me at www.askshelly.com if you feel that it is time for you to break through to your next level. It is possible. And having an accountability partner, having a professional, an expert partner with you and bringing you to that place is important. Therapy is a process where you have to consent. There are benefits and there are risks and there are liabilities and all types of things. We have documentation that our partners sign, our clients sign when they're coming on board. We develop a treatment plan. We create a roadmap that is very specific with target dates and the specific things that we are going to do to help you to achieve your life goals. This is not therapy. It's not an attempt to replace that process. However, it is an opportunity to share feedback, right? To share tips, keys, tools that you can deposit into your wellness toolbox. We are talking about childhood suicide amongst our children. And so I appreciate it. I will appreciate it if you share. It is going to be a blessing to someone. You never know who is suffering in silence. Let me say that again. You never know who is suffering in silence. So share. Please also make sure that you are engaging. Make sure you comment. Make sure that you are playing an active role in this discussion. I'm going to go ahead and ask the question that we're going to be highlighting today. If you are on, hello Facebook, hello YouTube, make sure you let me know where you are tuning in from, what state you're chiming in from. Let me know who you are. We are going to go ahead and get started. You are now my consultation team. So I'd love to hear your feedback because it is valuable. Are you ready for this week's Ask Shelly question? And it reads, Dear Ask Shelly, I am writing on behalf of my husband and myself. We are terribly concerned about our son. We recently learned that he has been planning his suicide and feeling very depressed. I came to find this out in a very unexpected way. I was doing laundry and yelled for dark clothes like I do most Saturday mornings. I did not hear a response from him, so I went upstairs to his room. He was in the shower and his bedroom door was opened, so I went in to grab his dirty clothes from all over his room. Underneath his gym shorts was his journal that I did not know he had. It was open to a page with a message in all caps and aggression. I effing hate life. It doesn't say effing, it's the F word, right? So she goes, she picks up his shorts. Here's a journal that's open. And on that page in really big letters, I effing hate life. As much as I wanted to walk away and respect his privacy, I flipped a few pages back and was shocked at what I read. Was she wrong to keep reading, guys? Let me know. Was she wrong to keep reading? Engage, put your comments in the comment box. All right. So again, as much as I wanted to walk away and respect his privacy, I flipped a few pages back and was shocked at what I read. For months, she puts in big letters, he has been planning out his suicide with a timeline, including giveaways of personal items, connecting with family members, etc. I even learned that he had been broken up with by a girl he really liked and was hurting. I quickly left the room and told my husband. I felt like the worst mother in the world. How in the world could I have missed the signs? He is so funny. He is so caring. I noticed that he had been sleeping more, but attributed it to the pandemic. His father confronted him. He is now getting therapy. He is on medication for depression and seems to be doing better. I have a friend who has 2 children with similar challenges, but they present so differently. They have behavioral issues, they isolate, and just carry a dark spirit. My son is not that way, but still he suffers like they do. I am relieved that I now know what is going on with him, but I cannot escape the anxiety that I feel and the pressure that I feel to keep him alive. I would love for you to do a show on this topic. I would love to hear what you have to say. All right, Azana Grant chiming in from New York. Hello, New York is in the building. Azana, I am from Queens Village. Marjorie, yes. Oh my God, isn't it? Especially as parents, right? And you don't even have to be a parent, just a caregiver, a teacher, any interaction with children to know that they deal with this. Our children, they're so young, they're so innocent, it seems, not all of them, but you know what I mean? And they carry so much weight. They carry the weight of depression, they carry the weight of anxiety, confusion, sexual confusion, and so much more. And so we're going to talk about some prevention tips right now. I'm going to repeat the question I asked earlier. So this mom, for those of you who are chiming in, I will repeat the question. We're talking about suicide amongst children. Suicide amongst children and adolescents. That's what this question is about today. And this mother goes in, she sees her son's journal open on the bed or wherever it was under some dirty clothes, and she reads a few pages. I had asked you all, the listeners, was it wrong for her to read his journal? Now understand that the reason why she read it was because the journal was open to a page that said, I effing hate life. So it caused her to go back a few pages and read the journal. And I asked, was it wrong for her to read the journal? Is it wrong for us to read our children's journals? I want to hear it. Azana says, so thankful that they found the note. Now their son is getting the help he needs. Exactly. So would she have known if she didn't read the journal? I don't want to say that's right or wrong. We want to protect our children's privacy. On Instagram, Stefan says, no, it wasn't wrong for her to continue to read. Look what the fruit of it is, right? He's now getting help. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to read the question one more time. This is what I do just to make sure that people who are chiming in a little bit later know that what we are talking about. We're talking about suicide amongst children and adolescents. And so for those of you who are chiming in, please make sure that you are putting your feedback in the comments. It is so valuable. I do not know how many times I have gotten emails after I have gone live, and the people who have written in have said that your comments and your feedback, I'm talking about all of you, this community, was so helpful to assist them in making decisions and making transitions in their life. So don't hold back what you have to say. Comment, comment, comment. So one red cord. Hello, Lucinda on Instagram. She says, I think it was right in this sense because she may have saved his life. Marilyn Shaw here on Facebook says, no, it wasn't wrong. Awesome. I'm going to read this question again for those who just chimed in. Please let me know what you think. Please let me know what your feedback is. It says, Dear Ash Shelley, I am writing on behalf of my husband and myself. We are terribly concerned about our son. We recently learned that he has been planning his suicide and feeling very depressed. I came to find this out in a very unexpected way. I was doing laundry and yelled for dark clothes like I do most Saturday mornings. I did not hear a response from him, so I went upstairs to his room. He was in the shower and his bedroom door was open, so I went in to grab his dirty clothes from all over his room. Underneath his gym shorts was his journal that I did not know he had. It was open to a page with a message in all caps and aggression. I effing hate life. As much as I wanted to walk away and respect his privacy, I flipped a few pages back and was shocked at what I read. For months, he has been planning out his suicide with a timeline including giveaways of personal items, connecting with family members, etc. I even learned that he had been broken up with by a girl he really liked and was hurting. I quickly left the room and told my husband. I felt like the worst mother in the world. How in the world could I have missed the signs? He is so funny, he is so caring. I noticed he had been sleeping more, but attributed it to the pandemic. His father confronted him. He is now getting therapy. He is on medication for depression and seems to be doing better. I have a friend who has 2 children with similar challenges, but they present so differently. They have behavioral issues. They isolate and just carry a dark spirit. My son is not that way, but still, he suffers like they do. I am relieved that I now know what is going on with him, but I cannot escape the anxiety that I feel and the pressure that I feel to keep him alive. I would love for you to do a show on this topic. So we're talking about childhood suicide. There are 44, this is the last I checked because Harmony Mental Health and Behavioral Services actually did a suicide prevention workshop a couple of years ago. Shout out to my business partner, Robin Williams. It was an amazing turnout. It was so, so powerful. We had a mother come on as a guest speaker who walked in after her 13-year-old had taken his life. And it was just so powerful. She talked about signs and, things that she learned after the suicide. And again, it was so powerful. And what I can remember, I think we're averaging right now about 44,000 successful suicides in this country a year. Okay, suicide by death is the 3rd leading cause of death between the ages of, I believe it's 10 and 14. 3rd leading cause. And it is the 2nd leading cause of death between the ages of 15 and 24. And that was back then. So I'm assuming that those numbers have increased, especially with this pandemic, not having peer interaction, probably, feeding and responding and emotionally reacting to the anxiety of their parents. We know that domestic violence is at an all-time high. Child abuse is at an all-time high. Divorce is at an all-time high, all as a result of the pressures that coronavirus has brought, but so much more. I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now during the pandemic is just exposing issues that were already there, right? And so Lucinda on Instagram, Lucinda on Instagram says, it's not the parents' fault. A lot of people don't know the signs. Robin Williams always had a smile on his face. Thank the Lord, they're getting the help they need now. That is so good. When people ask me, what are the signs, right? We talked about some statistics. What are the signs? I am very hesitant to even respond to that because truth be told, there aren't any telltale signs. I mean, there are classic signs like, significant changes in behavior, isolation, things that appear like depression, right? And I talked about, drastic changes in behavioral patterns is a huge sign. Interruptions and disruptions in appetite, whether it's eating too little or too much, disruptions in sleep, whether sleeping too little or too much. I mean, but the thing is that there are so many parents that have suffered the loss of a child by suicide that say that their child did not present with the classic signs. I think that it is more important for us to focus on preventive measures than the signs, because there are children and adolescents who have been thriving in school, thrive within their peer circles, they do well in school, that have successfully completed suicides. And so I think it's more productive for us to focus on preventive measures as opposed to what the signs are. And that is what we're going to do today. I want us to first start out, and listen, the workshop that I did, the workshop that we did, Robin Williams and I, and I'm not talking about the superstar, not the celebrity, although she is a celebrity in this community. I'm talking about my business partner. Some years ago, we did a suicide prevention workshop. It is to understand that when we're looking at how to address issues when it comes to children, we are not able to address those issues until we take a look at whether the child's needs are being met. That is very important. Okay, let me say this again. It is very important before we address the matter at hand. We have to be able to assess whether the child's needs are being met. So the workshop that Robin Williams and I did was about 2.5 to 3 hours. And I'm going to try to do this in about 30 minutes. So bear with me. We can't go over all of it, but I do encourage you as parents or caregivers, if you know someone, to reach out to me, connect with me, info@askshelley.com, visit at www.askshelley.com to get the additional support that you may need. So I want to first focus on protective factors versus risk factors. Protective factors versus risk factors. The goal for every parent is to assure that your protective factors are overflowing over and above the risk factors. You don't want to have a child in a position where the risk factors are greater than the protective factors. So protective factors, just an example, may be spiritual belief, right? A spiritual belief system, right? That is considered a protective factor. So if a child has been raised to believe that, I'm just going to give you an example. I'm not saying this is truth. I'm just saying I'm just using this as an example. If the child was raised to believe that suicide causes you to go to hell, right? I'm just giving an example. That's considered a protective factor. Their spiritual belief system that they have been raised in is considered a protective factor. If the child is in a very supportive community, right, that's considered a protective factor, right? If the child is very ambitious and has a clear vision of future, that is considered a protective factor. An example of a risk factor is a child that is from a home that is not stable, right? That's considered a risk factor. A child who has a family history of mental illness or has a family history of individuals who have committed suicide, or a history of depression, a history of anxiety, or if the child itself, has issues with depression, anxiety, or just has issues with emotional stability as a whole, that is an example of a risk factor, right? So when you understand the importance of making sure as parents that we are increasing those protective factors over and above those risk factors, make sure you write that down. There's a protective factor that I want to focus on today. One protective factor, and that is the needs of the child. That's a protective factor. The more that we are meeting the needs of the child, the more that we are putting weight on the protective factor side, okay? When we're talking about child's needs, I want to talk about it in mind, body, and soul very quickly. Child's needs in mind, body, and soul. It is important for us to understand that when we are trying to deal with issues, one of the first things that we have to deal with before we directly address the issue is to see if needs are being met. You know, when I go to the hair salon and I just want some treatment, you know, I just want to go and put the hot oil treatment, get me under the dryer and let me go. But there's a specific salon here in Kissimmee. They ask you, how much water are you drinking? How much are you sleeping? How much? Why are they doing that? They are assessing the degree to which I'm meeting the needs of my hair. So it's just like that when we're dealing with emotional health. It's important to understand children's needs are important. And so when we are talking about how do I protect my child from suicide, it's important to understand what those needs are. Now, while we cannot go over all the needs, I'm going to just highlight a few. When we're talking about the body needs, the physical needs, we're talking about making sure that annual exams are up to date. You're probably like, really? That's an easy thing. But I don't know how many times I have had parents come in and they can't tell me the last time their child saw a dentist or the last time the child saw an audiologist, right? To get their hearing checked or their eyes checked. Children they need to have their annual examinations. It's called annual for a reason every year. That's important. It's important for children to get adequate sleep. It's important for children to have healthy meals and healthy snacks. I always encourage parents, make sure that you're putting meals and snacking on a schedule. Rituals, very, very healthy. It's important that, you know, children, especially younger, that you're limiting their intake of food with dyes, that you're limiting their sugar intake. Children need to move. Let me say that again. Children need to move. Move, move, move. Children are so stagnant in this day and age. Tell me why. Let me see if we're on the same page here. Why are children so idle in this day and age? Children and adolescents, give me a number one reason why children are so stagnant and idle today and they're not getting enough movement. Talk to me Facebook, talk to me YouTube, talk to me Instagram. What keeps our children from moving enough? Tina Tati reported, my kid reported an issue with sleeping, issue with PCP at annual, and this is something he did not tell me. Exactly, right? You know, sometimes you just look at your child like, wait a minute, you didn't tell me? You know, I remember there was a time just a few months ago, I had to rush my son to the hospital, but he had been dealing with these symptoms, right, that caused us to go for like almost 24 hours and didn't share. So there's an issue with vulnerability. We'll talk about that. Tina Tati on Facebook says video games, phones. Azana says technology. Yes. Our children are in this gaming, you know, world, and they're not moving enough and they are not interacting enough. When we're talking about needs of a child, understand they need human interaction. They need interaction with their peers. I grew up at a time where we went on the block, right? When that sun went down, everybody was on the block. We're playing double dutch, we're riding bicycle, we're racing, we're playing softball. And I understand that it's a different time, but movement and interaction, healthy interactions with other peers are extremely important. So I always recommend to parents is make sure that you start a payment system. What does that look like? That payment system is for every hour of gaming, you owe me 3 hours or 2 hours, double it, 2 hours of interaction with your peers, outside with your friends, playing with your siblings, right? We want to make sure that their interactions with others is trumping the amount of time that they're spending on social media, gaming, etc. So create that. So make sure that they know for every hour they owe you blah, 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 right? Or you can make sure that they cash it in. Well, mom, I went to baseball this week. I did this, I did that. Okay, so that earned, so now you have earned X amount of time on the PlayStation, Xbox, whatever it is. I don't know. I thank God that my children have never been into gaming, but whatever it is, you want to make sure that that interaction with humans, those healthy peer-to-peer interactions is so important. important. Limit your child's gaming and access to social media and access to devices. We're talking about meeting childhood needs, adolescent needs as a protective factor against suicide. Now let's talk about mind needs, emotional needs, okay? We're going to talk about emotional. These are not all of them, but I'm just trying to highlight the top ones. The first one is making their name safe. And we always teach this when we're having parenting trainings and parenting workshops. How do you use the name of your child? A lot of the times when we are praising them and we are loving them, right? We say, I love you. We say, I'm proud of you, right? We say this, and we're going to talk about that statement in a second. When we are disciplining them, we say, I can't believe you did this, Johnny. I can't believe you did this, Betty. I can't believe. It's like something about when the use of their name, that parents tend to use the use of a child's name more so when they are implementing discipline and disciplinary actions, sometimes punishment, which is not effective. Different story, right? But we tend to use their name more so in a negative context than when we are telling them that we love them or we are reinforcing them, right? So it's important to say, I love you, Johnny. I am proud of you, Shelly. Aren't you proud of yourself, Martine, right? We have to make sure that we're using their names more in those positive contexts when we're sharing emotions and love and encouragement, more so than we do when we're disciplining them. But it's just a common thing that we do as parents. And so making sure that the child's name is safe is important. Make sure the atmosphere reflects that the child is honored. You know, I always find it so weird when I walk into a parent's home and I don't see any pictures of the child anywhere in the home. Isn't that, and maybe I shouldn't use the word weird, but the atmosphere has to reflect that the child is a priority. The atmosphere has to reflect that the child is a priority, that their successes are celebrated. Amen. So we have to make sure that the atmosphere that the child lives in reflects that they are priority. Quality time. We've talked about this so much. Quality time, one-on-one time with mom, one-on-one time with dad. That is very important. And during that time, having eye contact, skin contact, verbal contact, all happening at one time. That is quality time. We have to make that time to do that with our children one-on-one. Family time is great when everybody's together. That's awesome. I'm talking about that one-on-one valuable time that really builds connections and attachment and gives you the opportunity to have conversations of care. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Conversations of care. And it'll make sense. Just give me a couple of moments. So quality time with parents is important. Self-pride. You know, sometimes we say, I am proud of you. I am proud of you. I always caution parents to limit the frequency of the use of that statement. We don't want our children to work hard to please others. We want to make sure that they are pleased. So a better way to address when they do an amazing thing is to say, wow, Johnny, you must be proud of yourself. It makes me so happy that you are proud of yourself, right? It teaches children to do it for them, right? To do it for them, to earn it for them, to go the extra mile for them. We don't want to have, a tribe of children that are doing working hard and achieving for others. So limit that statement, I am proud of you. And it's okay. You know, it's not saying that it's really, really bad, but I encourage parents to say, aren't you proud of yourself? It makes me so happy to know that you are so proud of yourself. Build self-pride. Make sure that you are avoiding words that cut. Avoid words that cut. Avoid words that cut. Sometimes we use words that have so much impact, and we don't necessarily understand just how negative that impact is. So make sure that you are using words that are building, that you are placing more focus and concentration on the gifts of your children. Learn what they are. Learn what they are. I mean, I've been doing this for years. 2.5 decades. Where sometimes parents don't even know the unique gifts of their children, right? So it's important to highlight that all the time. Make sure that you're speaking it. Use words that build. Don't equate their behavior with their value. You're bad. No, they're not bad. Their decision was probably poor, right? They are bad. No, their behavior may have been maladaptive. Their behavior may have been unproductive, but make sure you call it what it is. That thought process wasn't the best. That decision wasn't the best. That behavior was selfish. That behavior was greedy. We have to make sure that we are not paralleling, right, their behavior or what they're displaying as their character, because that's exactly what they're going to produce. You tell them they're bad, you tell them that if you're constantly saying that, they're going to become what it is you say. And so be very careful that you are not, calling your child or limiting their character to the things that they are doing. If it's their behavior that's maladaptive, then you say it's your behavior. That was unproductive. That behavior was, that decision was, that choice was. We have to be careful that we are not calling our children by what they do. That's very important. One of the most powerful things that any parent could say to their child is, I believe in you. That's an important one. I believe in you. I think I believe in you is a much more productive, a much more impactful statement that I am proud of you, because we want them to be proud of themselves, right? We're just talking about emotional needs of children. Children need positive parenting. Children need positive parenting. So parents that parent using guilt and shame and judgment, it causes children to isolate and shrink back. It's no longer safe, right? It's no longer safe, and it causes increased guilt and shame and depression and anxiety and a lack of confidence. And so we want to make sure that we are, parenting positively, that we are disciplining and not punishing. Discipline, that's the root word of discipline is disciple. So we should be using teaching as the primary tool, primary method of growing our children. What does that mean? What does that mean? Most of the time when a behavior happens, a non-desired behavior, it can almost always be tied to a skill deficit. So we have to make sure that as parents that we are constantly teaching. We are constantly teaching new information, right? That's what discipline is about. Discipline is about teaching. Can you implement consequences? Absolutely. But you have to make sure that you are trumping that with teaching. Right? It's about discipleship. It's about discipleship. Children need new information, and we have to use that in the way that we parent. It's important that we are talking to children, that we are talking out why decisions were made the way that they were, why the decision was greedy, what decision could have been made better, right? We have to have these conversations. A lot of time we're quick to take the phone away, the game away, or hit, or, use corporal punishment, but using discipline is very important. We're talking about childhood needs right now. Childhood needs. Another, children need healthy adult interactions. They need healthy child to adult interactions. That is so important. And how can we promote that? I call it conversations of care, where you're having conversations with children and you are not using that time to discipline them, but you're using that time. This is children and adolescents should just listen, reflect, be present. Make sure your body language says that you are valuable. And even when the things don't make sense, because sometimes our children would come home and they're so depressed and they're so angry and they're so upset. And then when they tell you the issue, it's like, that was no big deal. But guess what? We cannot minimize their experience. No parent should ever minimize the aversive experiences of our children or any child. We have to listen. We have to put ourselves in their shoes and understand that this is really, if this child is talking about it, then we have to recognize that as a need at that time. And so making sure that we are engaging in conversations of care, asking how you're doing, how are you feeling? When's the last time you cried? Are you sleeping? Do you have hope for the future? What is it that you want to do? And listen, this has to be done on a consistent basis. You can't wait for issues to arise and then say, I need to have this conversation of care. right? You can't wait till you're suspicious of something. Like, I think Johnny's having sex, or I think Janet is having sex, and now you want to sit down and have this conversation. It should be something that is ongoing. And I say this all the time. We all understand the importance of parents being involved with their children as a protective factor, having those open lines of communication. Guess what? Many of us did not receive that from our parents. And so we don't know what the skills look like in order to do that. And so if that is you, there is help. You can get parenting training. You can get the skill sets that you need to understand how to engage in a conversation of care with a child. How do you, after you have just sat there and listened and supported, if something was shared in that conversation of care that warrants discipline, how then do I do that without breaking the trust of my child? How do I do that and still can expect that they will come back to me and still speak to me, right? Those are things that you can learn. You can learn that through skill parenting training curriculums that will teach parents how to do that, how to have that great balance where your children can come to you, but you're still holding them accountable. But it's important to understand that we have to have these conversations of care with our children where we are just listening without judgment. We are listening. We're not disciplining. We're not trying to guide. We're not trying to advise. We are just being present. If they ask for feedback, you can give it at that time. But really making sure that they have our ear is very important. So those are just some tips about needs. We're talking about childhood needs. We talked about physical needs. We talked about emotional needs, soul needs, whatever that is, whatever your belief system is, make sure that you are teaching that child that. If you believe in a higher power, assure that your child understands what that is, because we want to make sure that children understand that their current issue does not have to be, like whatever they're going through, that there is hope for the future. And a lot of our belief systems, whatever it is, promote hope in the future. And so that soul need is making sure that we're teaching our children about their higher power, about what that looks like, about all the principles that are attached to that. Right? So again, we cannot talk about suicide prevention if we don't talk about the general needs of a child. Positive peer interaction, good sleep, meals, making sure that they're getting their annual checks, making sure they're eating vitamins, minimize social media, make sure that you're speaking to them, you're having those conversations of care, using their name in a positive way, quality time, speaking life into them, making sure that you're always highlighting the positive. What you attend to will continue. So if you are a parent that's always, the only time that you guys are talking is when something has gone wrong, understand that that will continue. What you attend to will continue. Thank you, Robin Williams, for that. She says it all the time in her teachings. That is so key. What you attend to will continue. If you are only attentive when something goes wrong, then you can bet your bottom dollar that things will continue to go wrong. So attend to the things that you want to promote, attend to the things that you want to multiply, attend to the things that you want to grow. That is so important. We're talking about needs. Assuring that children and adolescents have their unique needs met as a protective factor when it comes to suicide. Talk to me. Thank you so much here on Facebook. Martine says, great tips, and especially these days with the pandemic. Yes, right now in this pandemic, our children have unique needs over and above the things that I just shared, right? And so it's important to understand that we should be meeting their needs. Martine says, self-pride. I was not raised with that, but I make sure I say it a lot to my son to build his confidence. She says, I love quality time. Azana identifies social media as an issue, why children are not getting enough peer-to-peer interaction. She talks about video, game, and phone, and all of those other things that keep our children from having positive interactions with one another. All right, we're moving on. We're at 1242. We're at 1242. So we talked about protective factors versus risk factors. Parents making sure that protective factors are stronger and that they are trumping, right? That you have more protective factors than you do risk factors. It's important that when you are assessing those risk factors, that you have a plan to address them. Right? So let's go over. We talked about some examples of protective factors. We went in on children's needs and meeting those needs as a protective factor. For the risk factor, you got to make sure, parents, that you have a plan in place. What am I saying? If you have a child that is in a single parent home, right? If you are a single mother raising a child, that's a risk factor. Does it necessarily mean that all children from single parent homes will be suicidal? Absolutely not. It's just considered a risk factor. So you want to do what? Just make sure that there are good mentors, right? Good, figures, father figures for the child. Consistent father figures, consistent mentors. If a child has a tendency to isolate and be alone, you as a parent want to make sure that you're building community, that you are being a conduit for having that child be engaged in sports and extracurricular activities. If it's a child that has issues with depression or trauma or has a family history of such, you want to consider therapy. What are you doing for each identified risk factor? It's important for us to make sure that there's a plan in place, a way that you are addressing each risk factor. Therapy is so powerful. Sometimes most people feel like you need to have a significant presenting problem in order to have therapy. Well, you can have supportive therapy. That's just supporting your wellness. That's like a maintenance, tool to your wellness. And that's important for parents to know and understand. You could also do Big Brother, all the mentorship programs, but just making sure that you are addressing the risk factors consistently, intentionally. That's very important. I want to make sure that this writer understands Black in the Days. Yes, supportive therapy. Absolutely. It's important. We can just have therapy that supports the wellness that we are at now and continues to maximize and optimize that wellness. When we talk about functions of behavior, there are 4 main functions. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I am recommending that this writer sit with the therapist of the son and kind of talk this out so that they are very clear about what the function, what the functions of his behaviors were. Whatever behaviors that were attached to the concern is so important, right? So let's say she didn't mention that he was cutting, but let's say that there's a child that cuts, right? We want to make sure that the therapist understands what the function of the cutting was. So there are 4 functions of behavior. We do things and behaviors happen for attention. Behaviors happen for escape avoidance. Behaviors happen in order to attain something tangible. And behaviors happen because it's just sensory. It's just sensorily feels good, right? So when we are trying to address why something is happening, we have to understand and discover what the function of that behavior is. And so parents, I'm trying to help you to be an expert in the field so you can ask the right questions. What do you think the function of that suicide attempt was? You want to make sure that you're asking the therapist, right? What do you think the function of that cutting was? Was it for attention? Because if it was for attention, then we got to start to pour out. We need to look at routines and rituals and make sure that the quality time is there. Those conversations of care are happening. We have to make sure that parents are addressing their own emotional injury and trauma for how they were raised. Your story has a lot to do with how you parent. And so it's, sometimes as our children get well, it's important that we are addressing our own wellness issues as well, right? And so if it was escape avoidance, what is the child avoiding? What mental state, what memory, what is it that the child is, escape and avoiding? And how can we build resilience in that area, right? So what is the child trying to get? How can we reteach the child on how to get the things that they want, those tangible things, in a positive and productive way, and that they're not engaging in self-destruction in order to get it? These are examples. We need to know what the functions of behavior are so we can effectively address it. Behavior is language, and I'm going to end with this. Behavior is language. And parents have to learn. Ooh, these lights are so hot, y'all. These lights are so hot. 44 and lights doesn't work. Okay. So one of the things that parents have the responsibility of doing is learning how to decode that language. It's so difficult. But with help, you may not be able to do it yourself, but with help, with therapy, with someone that can consult with you in maximizing your parenting skills and your parenting understanding, right? You can learn how to successfully and effectively decode behavior as language, because the things that they do say so much. The things that they do say so much. And so I wrote something a couple of years ago. It's called the Adolescent Language Decoder. I think that's what it is. And I want to read that right now because I want you to hear what I mean when I say behavior is language. Are you guys still with me? You guys are with me? Hello, Facebook. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Martine says, great tips. Azana says, can you repeat the 4 functions again, please? Absolutely. So when we behave, think about a behavior: chewing gum, smoking, masturbation, cutting, right? Emotional eating. There are 4 functions of behavior, and it's important for us to be able to understand what the function of that behavior was in order to modify it, right? In order to be able to address it as therapists or even as caregivers. And so the first one is attention, right? So let's use the example of the person cutting, Janet cutting, okay? Let's say that's the behavior, self-injurious behavior. So self-injurious behavior that happens for attention means that she has learned that she can get mom in the guidance counselor office, dad at the same table. I can finally get the attention of my parents when I have had a cutting episode at school, and now everyone is here at this table, and now I feel valued. Now I feel like I matter, but I have to do this. I have learned that I need to hurt myself in order to achieve or gain the attention that I want. Right? So that's an example of when the function of the behavior is attention. The second is escape and avoidance. So there's something about cutting that takes my mind off the rape. There's something about cutting that takes my mind off the molestation. There's something about the cutting that takes the pain that I have and the pain that's associated with hating myself. That I rather feel the pain of a knife against my skin. I'd rather see the bleeding than to deal with that pain. That's an example of escape avoidance. So we have to identify what the child is escape avoiding, build resilience there, and really provide therapy in that area. The next is tangible. I do this to get something. So it could be when I cut, I know I get to go to the guidance counselor's office and get a meal, right? Or I punch you in the face because I want your purse, or a child that's aggressive because they don't know how to share. This is just examples of when a behavior happens to gain something tangible. And then there is sensory. I do it because it feels good, right? And that could be, I had a client once, an autistic child. I say child, but he was like 6 foot and used to beat me up every week. But he used to pick his gums because he liked the taste of the blood. And it got to a point where he almost had like no gums left. It was very destructive, but the function of that behavior was sensory, right? So it's important for us to be able to identify why we do the things that we do. Gum chewing, a lot of times it can be escape avoidance. It can be sensory, that I have to have something in my mouth, right? I just have to have it in my mouth, and that's considered a sensory fueled behavior. So thank you so much for asking me to repeat that. I probably was going way too fast. So we are talking about decoding behavior and the importance of parents understanding how to translate behavior into language. And so right before the workshop, literally, we had this workshop a couple of years ago. It was a suicide prevention workshop. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I just start writing. I am not a poet. I don't claim to be, but I definitely want to share this with you guys. So I'm going to read it. And it is the Adolescent Language Decoder. When I say I hate you, It is because I don't know how to communicate a need I have that you are not meeting. When I say I hate you, it is because I had an expectation of you that you did not meet. When I isolate, I am hurting. When I isolate, I have fallen victim to my dark thoughts. When I isolate, it is safe. I hate feeling like I don't belong. I don't know how to connect with others. When I become angry and destroy things, it is because I do not know how to tell you what I need. When I become angry and destroy things, I don't know what I need, but I know what I want. I want the pain to stop. I want the pain to go away. When I disrespect you, I just want to fulfill a prophecy that you don't care and won't be around long. When I disrespect you, it makes me feel good to see you angry because I feel miserable. When I disrespect you, it is because you are among the authority figures that were supposed to protect me that ended up hurting me over and over. When I say I don't know, it is because it is not safe to share. When I say I don't know, it is because nothing ever happens when I do share, so I don't talk anymore. When you think I am not listening, I am. I am attending to everything that you have not said. When I tell you to leave me alone, it is because I hate that I need you. When I tell you to leave me alone, it is because it is safer in my dark thoughts than in the truth of your love for me and desire to help. I have been hurt too many times. I prefer to be with my friends because they think like me. I prefer to be with friends because no one asks me to remove my mask. Because I cannot express my pain through words, nor is there anyone I feel I can speak to. I express through bleeding and other forms of pain that hurt so good. I cannot bear the emotional pain, but can deal with the physical injury. It is my release. When I say I hate you, it is because I love you and hate myself. When I say I hate you, it is because I hate the truth that you caused me to face. I don't have the skills to tolerate the truth. This is just an example of taking the behaviors of our children and our adolescents and taking the time to truly assess what is trying to be said. What is the message here? What is being said here? We tend to focus more on the behavior, the disobedience, the rebellion, and the frustration that it causes. And so it is important when you are too close to it and it's hard for you to be objective in it, to align yourself with an objective party that can assist you with decoding behavior. I see here. Awesome. Okay. Martine is saying masturbation. I think I mentioned that as a behavior. So anything that you can see, anything that you can measure, you can say this, it happens this many times for this many minutes at this degree, right, is behavior. Masturbation is a behavior. What is the function of it? What is the function of it? Well, it could be for many different things, right? It could be for a release. It could be escape, avoidance of anxiety for those who use it as a anxiety release. So when you're doing it as anxiety release, in that particular case, masturbation is escape avoidance, because that state, that emotional state that you are trying to avoid is anxiety. When would masturbation be for attention, you might say? Well, if you're trying to gain the attention of a man, or vice versa, if a man is trying to gain the attention of a woman, don't get arrested. Make sure you do it like in an appropriate way. But that may be an example of trying to gain the attention of someone. You want someone to attend to you. I know when I was working with adolescents in an after school program, you know, the young girls, they had so many issues with truly understanding their value that they would masturbate just to get the attention of the boys. They knew that they would watch them, that they would record them and things of that nature. So in that particular sense, Martine, the masturbation, the function of that behavior then becomes attention, right? So now we have to take a look at why does the child need that form of attention? What are the voids? How did those voids get there? What's the emotional injury that caused this person to need that type of attention? Again, it's important to know the function of the behavior, because if something is fueled by attention, right? If something is fueled by attention and you're trying to address it as if it's an escape avoidant behavior, then you've just lost it, right? Azana, very good. She says it could also be sensory. Yeah. Why? Why could it be sensory? Feels good. Right? And so again, understanding the true function is important, because we cannot treat the issue if we don't understand why it's happening. And so parents tend to discipline without really taking the time to understand and dive deep into the why. Yes. So again, Azana says, in terms of masturbation as a behavior, it could also be sensory, absolutely. And then in that particular case, yeah, that's normal, right? I understand that people have different spiritual beliefs surrounding that, but yes, in that particular case, do we really need to treat that, right? We may need to educate on appropriate ways, like to not do it in public, to be in your room, or whatever the situation is, but you are absolutely right. Martine says, this is powerful, Shelly, and heard some of them from my son. Can you share that piece with us? Absolutely. Martine, are you talking about the adolescent language decoder that I read? Is that the one that you want? For those of you who want that, I read the adolescent language decoder. If you want that, if you want me to send it to you, put your email in the comments, or you can private message me if you don't want to put in the comments. Direct message me and I will email that to you. It is so powerful. I love helping parents walk through the process of truly understanding why behaviors happen. It's so important that we dive deep into the why. And so again, writer that wrote in, I would really like for you to really sit with the therapist and just kind of throw some things around so you are staying engaged in the therapeutic process of your child. Okay, Martine says yes. Okay, all right, perfect. Anybody who was on this live, even if you're catching the replay, just direct message me right here at Ask Shelly on my Facebook page. You can direct message me if you are a friend on my personal Facebook page as well. And I will send you that adolescent language decoder, and I will sue you if you try to infringe on copyright. I'm just kidding. But listen, if you want it, make sure that you send me your email address and I will forward that to you. Thank you, Martine. I see that you sent me your email address. I will make sure that you get that. Anybody else that's listening, go ahead and direct message me, and I will assure that you get a copy of the adolescent language decoder. It's important for us to understand what behaviors are saying. We want to make sure that we understand what behaviors are saying. Okay, so this was this week's Ask Shelly show. We talked about childhood and adolescent suicide. We talked about protective factors, what to do with risk factors. We talked about how it's more important to focus on prevention than signs, because sometimes and oftentimes there are no signs, although there are classic signs that we briefly mentioned at the beginning. We talked about meeting the needs of children. It's important to meet their needs, meet them where they're at, their mind needs, their body needs, their soul needs, to make sure that you are engaging in positive parenting. Understand the functions of behavior, understand that it's language, right? Understand that the behavior is language, and taking the time to understand the why. That is so important. We can talk about this topic forever and ever. I would love to have a guest on this topic. I'm actually going to reach out to someone who I hope can join us in the next upcoming weeks to talk about this a little bit further, especially during this pandemic, when there's a lot of needs that are challenging to meet, during this time, still making sure that we're doing the best that we can to maximize the wellness of our children in this season. Thank you guys so much for joining. You guys are an awesome consultation team. Feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Ask Shelly. You can have access to all of my videos. I have been recording videos once a week for the past little bit over a year. And I have some other videos and some speaking engagements that's on. You can find that on my YouTube channel as well. And if you want me for your next event, you can do so by connecting with me at www.askshelly.com. If you feel that you need more support, whether it's individual for your marriage, for your relationship, or for your family, feel free to email info@askshelly.com to get the help that you need. Make sure that you are sending your questions to info@askshelly.com. You can also submit your questions to www.askshelly.com, and it will be selected to be highlighted on one of my Ask Shelly shows. So make sure that you send your most difficult questions or things that you have also always wondered about. And again, it will be highlighted right here on this platform. And my community of consultants will give you feedback and tools for your wellness toolbox. Once again, I am blessed by your view. I am blessed by your shares. Remember that it's not only a blessing to me, although I'm blessed and it makes me feel so supported when you do that, it is a blessing for someone that is out there. There are so many parents that are suffering in silence. There are so many parents that have children that are suffering in silence. So you never know whose ear gates or eye gates this live will land in. And so please share to parent groups on Facebook, share to your friends on social media. You never know who needs to hear this. And while we did not cover all aspects of it, I sure do hope that you have some tools to add to your wellness toolbox. Till next week, next Tuesday at 12 o'clock, I'll be right here live. And until then, you are commanded to dominate in all that you do. Be the light, be the salt, illuminate, dominate. We are under an open heaven. Do not forget, do not be distracted in all that's happening around us. We are still under an open heaven. God will never leave us and never forsake us. And because of that, peace will never leave us as well. So be in peace, be well, and I'll see you next week, Tuesday at 12.